Okay, my watch just hit 5 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jack Walsh, and I am proud to serve as the board chair for the Valley Community Foundation this year. After almost 17 months now of social distancing, I know many of us are zoomed out and would rather get back to in-person meetings and events. Trust me, I do as well. Though not having to get dressed and drive to meetings does still have some appeal. I want to personally thank you for taking the time to join us on this steamy evening as we present VCF's annual reception in digital format. I promise this will be just as special, and it will be brief. Before we jump into the program, a few quick housekeeping items. All participants are muted. If at any point you are having difficulties, please contact us using the chat feature. We're planning to have you on your way in under an hour tonight. So with that, let's get started. There's a lot we can say about the last year. There were so many challenges beyond just the coronavirus itself. Our healthcare systems have never been stretched this far beyond their capacity. Teachers, parents, and children have endured major changes to education as remote and hybrid learning and in-person learning with masks and social distancing have become new norms, requiring adjustments by everyone. As lockdown and restrictions were implemented, many employment sectors were hit so incredibly hard, leading to tremendous job loss and employment insecurity. This all contributed to housing issues and an increased demand for social services, in many cases by those who had never before found themselves in need. Nonprofits, in turn, had to find new ways to operate and adapt to creative methods to raise funds. Most importantly, Black and Brown communities faced notably higher levels of adversity and were disproportionately impacted more than others during all this. It really was the perfect storm. And as many of you know, it is something that we're still emerging from today. Despite all of this hardship, there was hope. Hope that we would continue to be together while apart. Hope that we would one day get through this. Hope that the worst was behind us. And hope that better days would soon be ahead. That's why the theme of our annual report this year is a year of resilience, as you can see. And really, isn't that ingrained in the history of the Valley? No other region in the state or anywhere that I know of can regularly come together during both the good times and the bad to consistently accomplish so much. To capture a glimpse of this, we appealed to the community for a little help. We asked people who live and work in the Valley to share their photos of hope during the pandemic. These pictures have proven to be a beacon of light during an otherwise dark time. Some of the images appeared in the annual report. Those and dozens of other pictures are featured in a montage that we will show you at the end of the program. So please stick around. So what was our role in all this? For starters, at VCF, we adapted our grant-making process to respond to the new needs of varying nonprofits. We pulled together community partners to keep critical work flowing. And my colleagues on the board showed our collective gratitude for this resilient effort, as well as the others who serve it. At the onset of the pandemic, we heard loud and clear from our Valley nonprofits that they needed unrestricted funding as quickly as possible to help maintain daily operations. Our partner in philanthropy, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, otherwise known as TCF, led the region as we made a concerted response. Together, we dramatically reduced the time to process responsive grants. And multi-year grant awardees were given the option to have a second year of grant payouts made in May, rather than waiting for the traditional October release of funds. In 2020, VCF made a total of $1,963,333 in grants, of which nearly $885,000 was awarded through the responsive grant process. It's important to note that staff at VCF and TCF had been getting used to working from home only a few weeks into the pandemic. Thanks to everyone's focus and determination, we deployed desperately needed dollars to where they were needed the most, and did so faster than ever before. This really was a tremendous accomplishment, so congratulations to all that were involved. Excuse me. Part of understanding the needs and opportunities of our community is through the years of data collection. This included recognizing that some communities were being hit by these new challenges much harder than others. How communities fare in well-being and resiliency was often based on zip code, neighborhood, and most importantly, race. That is why VCF has been committed to expanding our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, better known as DE&I. Our late board member, Jim Hodge, was instrumental in sending us in the right direction before his sudden passing last summer. DE&I was something he was passionate about. It was a topic he artfully articulated based on his lived experience and a career spent in education. The first of many steps was taken together on a cold, very cold September morning at Holy Ghost Park in Shelton, where we held a socially distanced retreat for the staff and board on this very topic. Dialogues were facilitated by a consultant who specialized in DEI. To put it bluntly, those conversations were sobering, meaningful, constructive, and to be honest, they were needed. As a whole, VCF is committed to learning more on the DE&I efforts in the Valley, and we will share some more on this a little later in tonight's program. This will include the announcement of a new major initiative, as well as a series of community briefings on related topics that are planned for later this fall. I would invite you and encourage you to consider participating. Before we get too far into this program, I would like to acknowledge Don Smith, who served so well as our chair during 2020. What a year to lead the board in this organization, Donna. From the beginning, Don's leadership was easily felt as many difficult decisions were made throughout the year. Don was also among those board members who hand-delivered care packages and snacks to first responders and frontline workers. During lockdown, you could find him, along with some other board members, making deliveries to police stations, firehouses, ambulance corps, and nursing homes as a token of our collective appreciation, something Sharon will speak a little bit more about in a moment. Don, thank you for your genuine commitment to the Valley and everything you have done, not only throughout your service on the board, but especially over the course of the past year as chair. We are lucky that you continue to be such an active and important member of the board. Finally, last but certainly not least, that brings us to Alan Tima. Each year we recognize outgoing board members who conclude their terms of service. At the end of 2020, Alan completed his second 7-year term of service at VCF. He was a founding board member of VCF and has truly been a dedicated leader. Over the course of his time with us, Alan has served as board chair for 3 consecutive years, from the start of 2016 until year-end 2018. Alan has additionally served on the board at TCF from 2005 to 2011 and served as their chair as well. There simply isn't enough time in tonight's program to speak to all of his accolades, the organizations he's affiliated with, and his unending and broad-ranging support for the Valley. Alan, I know that you've been here from the very beginning, before the concept of the VCF was developed. And I thank you on behalf of the board and the entire community for years of dedicated service and leadership in making the VCF what it has become. With that, I'm going to turn it over to VCF President and CEO Sharon Kalosius to talk a little bit more about some of the highlights from 2020. And I get my voice back now, I hope. Thanks. Sharon, it's on to you.
Thanks, Jack. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Sharon Clotius, and I'm the president and CEO of the Valley Community Foundation. I'd like to really echo some of Jack's points and first express my gratitude to the staff and board because the accomplishments taking place in the Valley really cannot be overstated. From day one of being remote to taking on more projects, adjusting to how businesses are being conducted while apart, through the creation and the administration of the Valley's COVID Response and Recovery Fund, and so much more. Our staff didn't miss a beat. If anything, I think those who may have not known us learned a little bit more about how we help the Valley and those that serve our community. So a big thank you to them. And I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by a board of directors who care so passionately about our 5-town region. When I say they get it, they really understand how to get involved. They're hand raisers, and most importantly, they take meaningful action, especially as so many elements of our community foundation needed to pivot during the pandemic. As Jack mentioned, many of our board members took part in a campaign to show our appreciation to frontline workers and the first responders throughout last year. What you may not know is that started with a conversation during a March board meeting in 2020. Like many of you, we knew this was going to be bad. We just didn't know how fast everything was going to close and for how long. We decided during that meeting to cancel all in-person events for 2020 and reallocate the balances of funds budgeted for those events to show our support for those on the front lines of COVID. We worked with local businesses to prepare and package the non-perishables, care packages, or individually packaged lunches. As local businesses, they were very appreciative of the support and were happy to help us show the support for those first responders and the medical personnel. Board members then personally dropped off those snacks and beverages to nearly 30 police departments, the firehouses, and the ambulance corps throughout the Valley. Board members also worked with Mizzy Cosmetics, a Connecticut-based beauty supply company owned by former Ansonia native, to put together products for the staff of Griffin Hospital. More than 400 care packages of lotions and creams designed to treat the hands and faces that were ravaged by sanitizer use, masks, and other forms of PPE that were delivered to the hospital's healthcare providers. This type of hands-on outreach is very different for VCF, but during this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, well, hopefully once in a lifetime, it was important to be actively part of the community effort, to share a message of hope, to let others know you're not alone. We are in this together. We support you and are grateful for you. Our staff and board spent a lot of time last year talking about silver linings in all of this, as I'm sure some of you did. And well, here are some of what we found. That health, while easily taken for granted, has become a focused priority. There is a newfound regard for family, spending time with friends, and finally hugging those that we care about. What we deem important has shifted and given way to simple gratitude. The frustrations of many new ways of life have produced a fond appreciation for what we continue to sacrifice to get through this pandemic. As we began to understand how widespread and dire the immediate needs were, more thought was also given to the long-term recovery efforts and how this could ripple throughout the community for years to come. What happens when the jobs disappear because the businesses have shuttered? How could people afford to pay for housing when they were income insecure, or without transportation, or have access to being able to work remotely? What happens when a loved one has complications from COVID or succumbed to the virus? How does that impact a family's financial picture? The challenges quickly became multi-pronged, systemic, and incredibly complex. That's why at that same March 20th board meeting, we announced the creation of the Valley Community COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. This was done in partnership with the Valley United Way, the Valley Council for Health and Human Services, and the Greater Valley Chamber of Commerce. The fund was complemented the work of the federal, state, and municipal government efforts and expands the local capacity to address all aspects of the outbreak as efficiently as possible. Since inception, this fund has rapidly deployed resources to organizations throughout the valley that serve the region, especially to those organizations supporting those who were disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus and its associated economic consequences. Last year, thanks to many of you on this call, the fund raised nearly $300,000 in contributions from close to 200 gifts. There were then 4 rounds of grant making over the course of several months, where 51 grants provided about $200,000 to our local organizations, not only to support general operating and the basic needs, but to also assist in the new needs such as PPE and telehealth. I want to thank my colleagues at the United Way, the Chamber, and the Valley Council, as well as our program officer, Valerie Knight-Taganji, for the time and commitment to get these funds out the door with so much thoughtfulness. We know the road to recovery will be long and uncertain, and please know that there is incredible work being done throughout the region to ensure our community can not only weather the storm, but ensure that the valley will thrive for years to come. While we talk about the long-term picture of the valley, I am pleased to also update you on some more details about the Community Foundation. I'm very happy to say that VCF is now above $32.5 million in charitable assets. How incredible is that? During all the events last year, we also distributed, as Jack mentioned, just under $2 million in funding through VCF's different grant programs and received almost $2 million in contributions. There were 11 new funds that were established, each created for an incredibly unique reason. You will be receiving special video links about the funds we welcomed to VCF following tonight's event. All told, there are now 216 donor funds at VCF. We are incredibly grateful to Tuan and Karen Bentlosh, who established a charitable lead trust and named their fund at VCF as the charitable lead. This is an incredibly generous and useful planning vehicle in which the remainder trust is set up and the benefits one or more charities for a designated period of time, and then distributes its remainder to one or more individuals such as children or grandchildren. As a result of this CLT, $50,000 a year is going to be going to building the Tuan and Karen Bentlosh Fund at VCF, which they in turn use to support their favorite causes here in the Valley. When the principal is distributed out in 20 years, any additional growth in that trust passes to the beneficiary, free of any additional gift tax. This type of gifting benefits both the nonprofits as well as the donor and the remainderment. This goes to show that donors in our 5 towns and their advisors are being much more creative in figuring out how they want to give the financial vehicles that they want to use to reach these philanthropic goals. Our Gate Society is just that. You will hear more on this just in a little bit, but the Gate Society is not just limited to funds being realized upon someone's passing, through a will. It's a close circle of friends of the foundation who are thoughtful, intentional, and planful about their charitable giving. It's these endowed gifts that secure the Valley's resiliency for the future and can perpetuate your values and show others what you really cared most about. So far, you've heard about our grant making, fundraising, and the ways in which we can invest charitable assets to help those who care about the Valley. doing all of this by following executive orders. Well, none of this would be possible without the tremendous support that we receive from our partner in philanthropy, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. To all of our colleagues in New Haven, thank you. Through a longstanding and mutual beneficial affiliation agreement, they continue to provide VCF with dedicated staff, back office support, investment expertise, and financial support that exceeds $1 million annually and makes our work in the Valley possible. This past year, we especially benefited from the sophisticated risk management planning that TCF incorporated in their technology plan. We were able to transition to a remote environment with only needing to bring our files home with us. It was amazing. I am pleased, very pleased, to introduce our next speaker this evening, the President and the CEO of TCF, Will Ginsburg, who will talk about the new initiative called Stepping Forward and how this ambitious undertaking will impact our region. Welcome, Will.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Valley. It's my great pleasure to join you this evening, as it's been my pleasure every year for the annual meeting of the Valley Community Foundation. For the last 17 years, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven has been proud to stand with and to work with Valley community leaders to build and grow VCF. We, the board members and staff of TCF, are your partners, as Sharon said, because like everyone in this meeting tonight, we believe in the Valley. We know the Valley to be a proud, strong, deep-rooted, and unique community that is forging its own forward path. And like you all, we believe in the Valley's future. For 17 years, our shared belief that VCF can be and must be a vital part of that future has been amply rewarded by the commitment and support of so many, including the people zooming into this meeting this evening, and indeed extending all the way back more than 80 years to the far-sighted generosity of Frank and Ross Gates. So we all come together this evening with a common vision and a shared commitment. Yet there are several individuals who deserve special thanks this evening. And at the risk of repeating some of what Jack Walsh said, I do want to single out Alan Tima, without whom I think it is safe to say there would be no VCF. Alan and I have a long history on these issues, and Alan has been a strong and consistent voice for 3 decades in making sure that the Valley benefits appropriately from the Gates Fund. Alan's been both an advocate and one of the principal architects of our institutional affiliation, not only putting it together, but making it work. He has served on the boards and is chair of both VCF and TCF, as Jack said. So I too want to say a personal thank you to Alan for his extraordinary contributions over these many years. And to thank all the board members of VCF and TCF who have devoted themselves to making this partnership work over all these years, including those who have served both institutions. Terry Jones is doing that now with great understanding and wisdom and commitment, and I thank you, Terry, very much. And I also want to say a special thank you to Jack Walsh, who's been such a fixture in support of the Valley in so many ways for so many years, and now playing yet another vitally important role for the Valley as VCF chair. And a special thank you too to our board chair at TCF, Nick Norcott, another great friend of the Valley. Special thanks tonight are also due to the TCF staff in New Haven, who, as Sharon said, do so much in support of VCF. In particular, I want to mention Angela Powers, our Chief Operating Officer, who's also our representative on the VCF board. And of course, as many of you know, Angela was VCF's first executive. And Wendy Gamba as well, who is our Chief Financial Officer and VCF's Chief Financial Officer too. And of course, finally, last but by no means least, much thanks to Sharon Closius and to her team here at VCF. Sharon is our day-to-day partner. She and her team are the ones who make all of this happen, and we are very grateful for that. Now, this last year or more, this time of COVID, as I call it, has posed challenges we could not have imagined. It has surely been a time of resilience, as the cover of the VCF annual report tells us. It has also been a time of terrible loss and of extraordinary enforced disconnection. It has been a time of deepened and inescapable inequity, with COVID's terrible costs falling so disproportionately on people of color, on women with children, on those exposed to the virus as frontline workers, and on those who lack the access to the technology that's needed to work safely or to learn safely in school. And this last year has been a time also of inescapable injustice, when we have been graphically confronted with age-old demons of hatred and racist violence. The video of George Floyd's murder remains a year later indelible. It has changed us, and it is changing our society too, as we've had to come face to face with the inadequacy of what we have all previously been doing to build a more equitable and just society. It's been great to see how many in business, in government, and in the social sector have committed this past year to do better and to do more going forward. Now, much of our efforts at TCF this past year, as at VCF, have focused on COVID relief for the nonprofit institutions of Greater New Haven and for the people that are served by them. And we've worked closely with VCF on these issues as they have affected the Valley. Looking beyond immediate COVID relief, TCF decided last summer and fall that this extraordinary time demanded extraordinary action on our part. Our $26 million plan to address the impacts of COVID and to advance racial equity in our region, including in the Valley, is called Stepping Forward. Stepping Forward will provide TCF with about $15 million in incremental discretionary monies to be spent over the next 3 years, an increase of more than 50% from what would otherwise be our annual discretionary spending. Stepping Forward will also provide about $11 million for 3 newly established endowment funds for racial equity, basic needs, and civic engagement. This $26 million is coming both from an unprecedented supplemental extraction from our endowments and from our donors. Never before in our 93-year history has TCF ramped up current spending like we are doing starting this year for the next 3 years. Stepping Forward is both building on and transforming our core philanthropic practices in many ways, ways too numerous to list this evening. Now, we're only 6 months into our 3-year Stepping Forward plan, so the ultimate shape of how we're going to spend this money is far from determined. Stepping Forward will respond in real time to how forces large and small are shaping our community in this time of change, including, certainly not limited to, the new federal funding that our communities will be receiving. Stepping Forward will also be shaped on an ongoing basis by what we are hearing from our community, and we are reaching out to listen to our community in new ways. So I'll conclude simply by saying this. This partnership that we have built together, VCF and TCF, over the last 17 years, can be a great resource for the Valley as we face the extraordinary challenges and opportunities of this unique time in our history. In New Haven, we look forward to continuing to work closely with VCF so that together we can step forward in this extraordinary time in the best ways possible for the benefit of the Valley community and the good people who live here. So I thank you all very much for our partnership and for the opportunity to be with you tonight. And I'm going to turn this back to our leader, Sharon Closius. Thank you again.
Thank you, Will. You know, I really appreciate the magnitude of this stepping forward that TCF is doing in the New Haven area. And though we may have different challenges here in the Valley, some of it is the same of, you know, the effects of this COVID. And it's clear that COVID really taught us to take equity under careful consideration. This is a great opportunity for all of us to move forward and to do so together. What does all of this mean for VCF in the Valley? Well, as Will was saying, we're going to be aligning our efforts starting in 2021 this year and beyond with TCF to help the Valley recover from COVID-19 and address some of the issues of the inequities that were really exacerbated by the virus, as well as the shutdown. An integrated plan is evolving and will continue to do so as community needs change in response to COVID-19 and racial equity. I know that Will said the same thing, but that's one of the things that is going on right now. We need to listen and we need to hear what's going on in our communities. We can't tell our communities what they need. We need to hear them tell us what they need. So we're going to be describing our stepping forward in the Valley with 4 main focus areas. First is to enhance our grant and capacity building programs that will assist our nonprofits as they develop their own responses as it relates to their clients and their constituents and issues as it relates to the pandemic. Valerie Knight-DeGangi is also talking with our local officials to see how philanthropy may be able to help leverage the ARPA funds that are coming from the government. Next, we're developing new equity strategies. Are we being strategic and thoughtful in our investments and work as it relates to our entire community? Do we need to put some different work in that area? Third, we will continue to raise and distribute money from the COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund and work with our colleagues in doing so. There are many needs and they will really begin to surface once the federal support begins to decrease. We want to continue to offer this vehicle for our community so that we can help others support the needs as they arise. People like to have a collective fund that they can give to. And the fourth is the continuation of providing a data resource for our Valley through the Valley Community Index and Wellbeing Report. As we have heard more times than we can count, follow the data. Well, data is critical, and the Community Index is done in collaboration with Griffin Hospital, the Naugatuck Valley Health District, and the Council for Health and Human Services. And it provides a common source of critical data that we all can use. We will continue with our work at building an informed community by holding these community briefings starting this fall on a range of topics. While the details are still to be determined, we are planning to cover topics on the workforce development, because that's critical in our area, childcare, and affordable housing. If you're interested in joining the dialogue, please contact us after the event or look for announcements on our website. We would love to have you be part of the conversation. Again, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, and I'd now like to turn it over to our Development Committee Co-Chair, Alita Miner. Welcome, Alita.
Thank you, Sharon. Hello, everyone. My name is Alita Miner, and I am the co-chair of VCF's Development Committee, along with my friend and colleague, Mary Ann Smythe. As you know, the Valley is an incredibly special place and such a tight-knit community. We have seen time and time again that we are all connected and continue to be there for each other in so many ways. At VCF, we are honored to provide a vehicle for others to give and make their legacy a permanent part of this community. Because when you give to VCF, your gift benefits the Valley forever. Last year, 11 new funds were established. They are the Derby Historical Society Organization Fund, the Ellen Dubois Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Neville Osmond Forsyth Senior Memorial Fund, the Carol Ann Hyder Memorial Fund, the Wazel Katz Scholarship Fund, the Julia Krizan Scholarship Fund for the Arts, the Dr. Carol Merlone Scholarship Fund, Ortoli Family Fund, Dr. Beth A. Smith Fund, Sturgis A. and Madeline Martin Sobin Family Fund, and Emil J. Varga Catholic Fund. After our program tonight, you will receive links to these fund stories, each explaining the why behind the generous commitment to establish a fund. You'll see that more than half of these funds were created in honor of or in memory of an educator. Maybe it's a sign of a lesson to be learned. If last year taught us anything, it's to be grateful for every moment we have with those we care about and to recognize the things we can often overlook in our daily life. If you find yourself inspired or wondering if you can create a fund to support a local cause or organization you care about, please contact us. Setting up a fund is easier than you think, and there are options that can fit your unique situation. Even more importantly, if you or someone you know wants to make a gift that costs you nothing during your lifetime, ask us about joining the Gates Society and make a planned gift. Planned gifts are revocable. If things change, they offer a range of flexibility for your overall financial picture and allow you to leave a lasting local legacy. These vignettes, along with our annual report, tell a beautiful story about how our community came together while apart to ensure the region's needs and opportunities are being addressed during a trying time. I would like to take a quick moment to thank those who helped staff make it possible. Video production was done by Glenn McCabe of Glenn Andrew Productions. Audio work by Gina Scarpa of Voiceovers by Gina. Annual report graphic design by Nicole Fitzgerald of iDesign Studio, and printing by Bill Kennedy of Kino Graphic Services. Earlier this year, we went out and asked the community for help. We asked for your pictures of hope during the pandemic taken right here in the Valley. While it was something so simple, we didn't think we would anticipate how incredibly powerful the end result would be. So we would like to personally say thank you to those who responded. Thank you for sharing your photos with us. Thank you for allowing us to experience your moment in your shoes. And most importantly, thank you for allowing us to share this with our community. Because even though 2020 was a really hard year, we all have newfound perspective for so many things. Without further ado, please enjoy the video.
I want to thank you for joining us. Here's Jack. I'll have Jack wrap it up for us.
I couldn't get back on.
Yeah.
Well, that was something special. Even during probably the darkest times of all our lives, we've never lived through anything like this before. As you can see, there's still always hope. And I want to thank everyone who sent those pictures in. There were a lot of very, very special moments in there. And I like the idea, you saw it several times. We'll get through this together, and we are getting through it. So before we wrap up, I just want to leave you a few things. First of all, thank you to the new fund holders who established their funds. And you saw their names, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see their videos very soon with the links that you receive. And thanks to all the other donors that they joined this year who have made the VCF possible. On behalf of our grantees and their clients, your generosity will help others in the Valley for generations to come. If you have any questions about setting up a new fund or ways that you can build one that already exists, give the office a call, 203-741-9162. It's just on the screen. If you didn't get a copy of the annual report, which you've seen parts of tonight, they're available on the website at valleyfoundation.org, or you can just contact the office. Also, contact the office if you are interested in learning more about the community briefings that will be taking place this fall. There'll be quite a range of topics, and we look forward to having you be part of the discussion, because it does take everyone in the community to solve the issues that we've got. And with that, we promise you we'd be brief. We said we'd be under an hour, and we are.
There you go.
That's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us online, and hopefully next year we'll be in person and we won't be Zooming. I'm not going to stand up, but I did wear a tie, no jacket, but I'm going to tell you, there's no suit with the rest of this. So thank you and good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.